where you've all got to in your various journeys of backgroundness. So last time we were putting together the background of the little picture. So we've got a layer of organdie and then some sheer fabrics and some stitching. That's all looking lovely. And I'm hoping, yeah, with Joan, yeah, I hope that's all looking similar for you as well. That'd be great. Yeah, fab. So how did you find that? Was that okay?
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, good. And were there any particular stitches that you found worked really well?
I say the opposite to that actually at the moment.
Okay.
I did some, do you call it detached fly stitching?
Yeah.
Detached. And I really didn't like it when I'd done it. So I just undid it and just did the plain running stitch. But,
okay.
You know, it was a useful exercise to do that and to see, you know, what stitches worked and what didn't really.
Brilliant. That's really, I think that's so important as well. So if you imagine what we're actually doing is creating samples here. And so if you find something that doesn't work, it's really good if you have like a little notebook or something that you can put note to self here. You know, don't like detach fly stitch on shears or whatever the reason is that you didn't like it. And it might also be worth thinking, well, would I like it more if I'd actually put or used a different colour or a different thread thickness, or, you know, what was it particularly, Hazel? Would you like to share what you didn't like about it, just to, so that you get an idea?
Yeah, partly see where I'd move from one stitch to the other, see the thread on the other side, and that was part of it. You know, if I got it on a plain piece of paper, it didn't show up as well, but it you know, I could see bits of it, and I you know, it just spoiled it really for me. Yeah. And also, I think I did too much of it. Right. It would be better if I'd done less.
Okay, that's interesting to know. So the other thing that you could consider then is, and it's a bit more painstaking, but you could actually cast off in between each of the stitches. And that would alleviate that idea of having threads going behind. Yeah. Or you could even perhaps try a slightly finer thread where it's perhaps not quite so obvious. But, you know, it's all part of experimenting. Did you like the stitch itself, or did you feel that?
Yeah, you know, it's a nice.
Okay, that's, yeah.
And, you know, on another piece of material, it would have worked quite well, probably. Yeah. But it was also enhanced by I'd done too many of them and it looked cluttered. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really useful as well. So I think all of those things are really, really important to put down when you're doing something. If you decide that you don't like something and you do take it out, think about taking a photograph of it, and then you can actually put that in the little notebook, you know, again, with note to self, and perhaps even consider what other fabrics you would use rather than this. So, you know, with this one, we're using a very sheer background, but you could actually put a thicker background with shears on top of it, is another way round it. So always start thinking, you know, how else can I make this work the way that I want it to? Because I think that's just really, you know, it's really important. And it's the sort of thing, when you look back on stuff, you think, oh yeah, because you think you're going to remember in the moment, don't you? And then, you know, you look back on it and you think, oh yeah, actually, yeah, that was really helpful for me for my next project. Was there anybody else who?
The only one, I rushed it too much, and I found herringbone. It's okay, but it's not as neat as I would want it to be. But that was just rushing it. And then I did do some weaving there against the running stitch.
Yes.
So that just gave a different thing. And I found out from that if you do that, you need to make your stitches even. Which I didn't.
Note to self, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So that looks like we've all got to a point then where we've got a background fabric, which is brilliant. Have you got your leaves or your sprigs or your...
You asked us to get to that stage? Did you?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's fine if you've cut them out, and it's fine if you haven't cut them out. So
Yeah.
so basically, in your pack, you've got some tracing paper. So I'm looking at those with leaves in their hands. So I think, Lou, has anybody else who's got leaves? They're very nice. Are they ginkgo? Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Where's
In
your
the-
ginkgo tree?
Oh, okay. It's not mine. It was in Darley Park near the cafe.
Oh,
And
lovely.
oh, that's the leaf for me.
They're just amazing, aren't they? They're sort of Japanese looking, aren't they?
The changing to at the moment is so lovely, the way it's toned
Beautiful.
from green to yellow.
Lovely. So with your bit of tracing paper, if you're at leaf stage, what you need to do is lay your leaf underneath and just literally trace around it with a pencil to get an image, okay? And then I remember last week I did my little oak leaf, yeah? So that's the image that I got there. And then what I did is I traced it onto a piece of paper, and that's what's going to create your paper pattern. And then that paper pattern gets laid onto your sandwich of fabric, okay, and then pinned. So if you haven't cut out your leaves or sprigs or whatever, now cut them out so that you end up with hopefully 3 different bits of leaf. Okay, so you can see I've got, yep. So if you want to just do that, I'm just going to move on to my little camera, and then we'll do the next bit.
Last week you gave the tip of having lots of pins in the.
I did. Thank you.
That was really good advice.
Good. Yeah.
I think I would have got into a right mess if I hadn't really pinned it as much as possible.
Yeah. You can tell I've been there, can't you? So yeah, pin it with 1 inch of its life before you cut it out. And if you pin round the outside and through the middle of your tracing, or then on the leaf itself, then that's also really good. Okay, so have you got yours drawn out, Lou? Are you?
I've actually cut mine out because you showed us that.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good. That's very nice to see a ginkgo. I hadn't realised we had one near us, so that's really good.
Just walking past. Oh, ginkgo!
Yeah, brilliant.
I think there's one in the Arboretum as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there.
Yeah, I've not been there for years. Must wander through. It's an amazing place, isn't it?
There's one in my garden, but we broke the top off, so it doesn't grow very much.
Oh.
I don't know how it happened, but the top's not on it.
Oh.
Does anybody know where they're native to?
Sorry?
I thought they were Oriental, Far East.
Yes.
The famous is through the Chinese area of Soho, London. They have ginkgo trees, and they're supposed to bring fortune or something.
Right. Okay.
There's a lot of ginkgo shapes, aren't there, included in a lot of the sort of Chinese stroke Japanese symbols as well, I think, aren't there? Which is quite interesting too. So it's very much about, putting and including things in your work that's local to you, really. And I think what we've got the benefit of in this country is the fact that we did have so many collectors, didn't we, who brought these amazing trees to here. So we've got the benefit of that. So sometimes I think it's quite hard to imagine whether it comes from here or not, really. Think about horse chestnuts. They really didn't, did they?
I've just Googled it, and it's from China.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you. That's really it's really good.
Yinzing. Yeah.
Oh, right. So this is the little piece that I did originally, which was my kind of idea of a sprig of eucalyptus. And what I did is what we're aiming for today, I'll just do it a little bit closer, is that we're going to create a pleasing design on your background, and then we're going to stitch those leaves on. And what I've done is I've done a combination of little running stitches, back stitches. I've gone round the outside of the leaves. Some of them I haven't put a little vein down the middle. This is where you start to kind of develop what feels right for you. So you don't have to do it like I've done it at all. Start reflecting, you know, how your style is, what you like about how things are attached. I did find on this one it was easier to sort of stitch up through the middle of the stem first, so that you kind of stabilize it, and I'll show you that in just 1 minute. So going now to the piece that I was working with last time. So this was creating a background again. Just going to move that over slightly. And I've cut out my leaves, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay on the leaves and just start putting them down and just seeing whether you like what you've got. So it just take yourself a few minutes now just to get a pleasing design. Okay, so you see I can just keep playing around with that. If you've got any of the sort of more sheer organza left, I've got this sort of darker green leaf here. And what I could do is I could, if I wanted to, I'm not saying I'm going to, but I could lay another piece of the organza over the top of it just to knock the colour back slightly. So I'm just going to see what I've just done there. You see how it just takes it back. So if you're not happy with how it's looking, then don't worry about being able to do that. If you're really happy about it, then that's absolutely, fine. I'm just throwing in this idea that you can, if you want to. And if I did it on that side, can you see it just slightly dulls now, the little piece I've got there? Yeah. So don't feel like it's got to be the finished piece with the leaves right up on the top. So just spend a few minutes getting that laid out the way you find it's pleasing to you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pin it through all the layers, not the mat that's on the table though. Hang on, I've just done that, right? And just pin it into place, just so that you've got a little bit of stability. Okay. And then once you've done that, just let me know that you're feeling happy with it and that you've got it all pinned. You might find if you're going to go up through the middle of a leaf, you could pin it horizontally across rather than vertically, so that you can still stitch the veins of the leaf or whatever. Is everybody all right with that? Good, yeah. Good. So in terms of materials, I've used in your packs a sort of combination of organza and sari material, but you could also use silk. So you might have done some silk painting workshops or something in the past, and that would be quite a nice thing to use. This little piece here is actually what's called mousseline, and it's a very fine silk which has been dyed. So if you find things you might find in charity shops when they're open again, little bits of silk or silk lookalikes that you could actually use to create some of these lovely wispy pictures. And I think we mentioned last time the old chiffon scarves, which people used to walk around with in the, I think it's probably more the 60s and 70s. I always remember my mum used to have one when she just had her hair done. It's seriously important to leave the hairdressers with this scarf on so it didn't get damp or something. How that was ever going to stop it getting damp, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, different times. How's everybody doing? Feel like you've got a lap there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fine. It's done,
So,
yeah.
yeah, and it saves you a little bit of work.
Mm.
And what's also quite nice is, you know, I've got a little bit of stitching underneath, and you can start to see the stitching coming through, which is quite nice. So if I don't know if you can
Yeah.
just see, yeah. So it doesn't matter if you can see some of the stitching underneath. It kind of almost adds to the design, really, which is really nice. Okay, so next step then is to thread up your needle with some of your thread that is you'd like to use for stitching
Is
your.
what we use the finer thread for.
Yeah. You can use the thicker thread as well, but you know, it does. I mean, what I probably would say is at this point it's really nice actually just to sit and stitch. If we go across the centre of the leaf, and if you're doing your flower, probably just put some hint of the petals on there, Jane. Yeah. So that we can get it stabilised, and I think that would be the first thing to do. I'm just going to use a little variegated thread that I happen to have, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start on this blue one over here that I've got, and I think it almost looks better if you don't quite come up to the end of the leaf. So I'm going to just start it here because this is the first bit of work you're going to do, and I'm just going to do some little running stitches down the middle. We can make these into what looks like a back stitch once we've done them. Sometimes it's called a double running stitch, you know, where you go back and fill the gaps in. So I don't know if you can see, I'm just nice little stitches just to get the first piece set, and it then enables you to take out the pins, and then you can start to continue to work your piece. So if we just all spend a bit of time getting that sorted. This is also the opportunity moving forward, if you like this technique and you fancy doing a little bit more of it, then you know you could think about using different colours of thread. So on this one I've got sort of more like a purpley blue going on, so always think about, you know, what else you could add to it if you wanted to, or do it the same colour so that your leaf continues to be very prominent in your, or flower is prominent in you. I was just also going to say as well, on my little piece here, I've got a little bit of a stalk. So if you've got something that's a little thin piece, then I'd stitch that as well, just to make sure that you hold it down. I'll say to Mel in a minute when she gets back. Okay. How's everybody doing?
Okay, thank you.
Good. So we'll just spend a time getting our pieces stabilised now.
I think I have used one of the pieces of fabric that I should have used for the leaves in the ground, because they're all quite dense pieces.
Right.
They're all the same density, which is fine, you know, I don't think it's a problem, but
the ones that I did originally, Mel, were all dense ones. Yeah, so it's not a problem.
right.
Yeah. It's just me doing a slightly different thing just so that you can see there's a different, you know, it doesn't all have to be that way, that was all. So that's absolutely, you know, fine. So I'm just going to come down and do my next leaf now. So just little running stitches again. And I think with this one, because it's a little bit more sheer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up again and do sort of like a running a double running stitch. So has anybody been doing anything interesting this week? Or seen anything interesting? Or
I've been tramping around the streets looking for a lost cat from my son,
oh,
who
have
has
you?
turned up this morning at 2 a.m.
Is it found?
The way they do. Disappeared off bonfire night type.
Sugar.
Oh,
my
yeah,
goodness.
that's a shame.
Anyway, he came back.
Is he the one that's just moved up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He left for a while. He'd been coming back, and then he didn't come back. But yes, a bit leaner and very hungry.
Oh.
He's back.
Well, that's good news.
Very, yeah.
I'm just going to say to you on this one here, so where I've got my little overlap, I don't know if you can see it, so I've done my stitching down the very sheer fabric, and where it overlaps, I'm now going to go up here. I'm not going to go over this lower part because that's covered by the sheer fabric. Okay, so if you've got anything where it's crossing over, stitch the very top piece but not the underneath piece, and then when you get back onto the underneath piece just being on its own, so singly, then you can start to stitch there, and then that way it gives a better perspective on the work.
My apologies, I think I'm on a slight catch up. It's a running stitch down the middle of each leaf to begin with, isn't it?
It is, that's right, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I was also saying, Mel, when you were just rejoining, on mine I've got a little stalk here.
Yeah.
That's quite useful to get that trapped down with a stitch. Yeah. And I'm also suggesting, if running a stitch isn't what you want, so if I try and just do it, you could go back and fill the gaps in, with a sort of like a double running stitch, and then that would be really nice.
Yeah, thank you.
That's okay. So it's just a nice peaceful activity really for just sitting and decorating your piece of work.
The fabrics are fraying, so is there a way you could actually improve and stop, or even stop that?
Yep, you could. One of the things you could do is if you got a bit of PVA glue, right, and you could dab it around the edges to start with if you wanted to, just to stop it fraying. Okay. One of the other options is to stitch it down and then trim it afterwards, just to get the frayed bits away. So if you don't want anything too harsh around the edges, then that's an option. You could also use Bonder web, which is the mesh that you can take hems up with, and you could actually iron them on. But I think that changes the gossamer quality of the work, but it is a possibility. And the other thing, of course, is you could vary the stitch. So if you've got quite a lot of fraying going on, then you could even use like a blanket stitch or something. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Or a satin stitch, so that you go over the edges, so that it actually looks a little bit like a plique. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think the other thing I'd also say is sometimes when it frays, it actually adds a quality to it. So the other thing is have a think about what it is about the fraying you don't like, and see if there's a way of resolving that, or just say, actually, this is very fine, and I'm going to try and work with it. It depends on your style, and I totally understand sometimes it can fray way too much, and I'd be inclined almost, if it's doing that at this stage, is just to retrim it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And I was just also thinking, in terms of the finished piece, you could actually stitch round the outside of it just to give it a bit of stability as well. Perhaps when you watching something on the telly, or I don't know, listening to music, go all the way around with a stitch that you quite like. You should all have a stitch guide, so there's some interesting ones on there, but maybe a chain stitch would look quite nice on this. going around the outside, so that you've kind of got a little bit of a frame going on here. The other thing we haven't really talked about is what else you could do with this, and obviously it's quite a useful little picture. You could do them on a smaller scale than this, and they could be little bespoke cards, couldn't they? So you've all got some really interesting leaves, and if you've got access to a printer photocopier, you could always reduce the size of the leaf that you've got. Now you've got the technique, and make smaller versions of them. And that would be quite a nice thing. You know, you could even perhaps make brooches with them, you know, so there's an opportunity, and that perhaps put it onto a little bit of felt after you finished it, just to stabilize it, which is what you could put the brooch back onto. So, you know, there's lots of different things you could do with this technique and add to it, which would be quite nice. So, yeah, so I you know, I think about it on top, you know, think about other things you could do with it. It would be also quite, I think, quite nice as a book cover or something, you know, if you've got a little notebook or something, or make a little notebook. It'd be really nice, perhaps gift. Because if you, I mean, I know we've sort of worked over a couple of weeks on this, but if you were, it's not a terribly long process, is it, this one? So you can actually, you know, do it and get some interesting effects with it, which is always good. Are there any other stitches that you think would be quite good to use as well? That's always worth considering. You could do chain stitch, that would be quite nice. And you could use a stem stitch, that would be another one. So just yeah, if there's anything you need me to show you, let me know.
Righty-ho.
I've got
Sorry.
I've got a rookie question for you, Philippa.
No, that's
Is
okay.
there a way, there's got to be a way, I know there's a way, of taking one thread without resorting to a ball? I mean, look at that, it's just snapped.
Okay, let me show you that one then, because there is a really neat method. So I've got this is my stranded thread. Yeah, I'm just going to cut myself a piece of that. I think one of the other things that's worth always thinking is don't ever cut your thread longer than from your nose to the end of your fingers. Yeah. Because that does create more tangling. So I'd always be a bit careful on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just splaying out the ends of the thread. Now, even if you were going to use 6 strands of thread, it's always useful and important to pull out each of these threads and put them back together again. And the reason for that is you get much more coverage, and you also get a better flatness to your thread, because at the moment it's been twisted slightly in the process of being manufactured. So I'm just going to take one strand and hold the end of that strand, and then you just pull, yeah?
Ooh.
Like that. And then you get your next strand.
Ooh.
So rather than trying to do what I think we used to be able to just pull it like that, weren't we? You know, pull it open. But if you do it this way, it very rarely tangles. Okay.
I read somewhere that what you should do is stroke your thread, and that's called loving your thread before you start sewing with it.
Oh, that's nice too.
Love you. Yes, thank you, that works. Yes.
Can I ask you as well, Philippa, while you're talking about this, if I was using 2 strands,
yes,
what I've read somewhere is make sure it's not twisted, but then fold it in half so that you have a loop at the bottom and 2 ends going through the top, and then when you start you can just go through your loop.
Nice. Yeah. Good plan.
So, and
Oh,
do you
so
think
they're
it's
not-
okay to do that, or do you think it's likely to turn your threads in some way?
I don't think it should. I
No.
think you probably just need to start off with longer threads.
Oh yeah, and this is
Yes,
just the
I know,
sample,
but I'm
yeah.
just thinking that's the only thing I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can't see any reason why that's a really good tip actually. I like that
Mm.
idea. So it's almost like you're making a little luggage label, isn't it, on the
Yeah,
back?
yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I think that's also worth saying is, you know, when you're working with any threads, just the action of stitching sometimes can make it twist.
Yeah.
So it's
Terrible.
oftentimes worth just dropping the needle down and letting the weight of the needle untwist your thread, or just roll it between your fingers to the needle through your fingers, just uncoil the thread, and then that is worth doing. So every so often you'll if you watch any of the kind of Royal School of Needlework folk and so on, they just twist the thread in their the needle in their fingers just to uncoil the thread, so that you don't get any major twist going on with it.
Yeah.
So that was another good thing to bear in mind too. Yeah. So and then if I just show you on there, see how, so I'll put my 6 threads back together. Can you see how much more flat that is?
Have
Yeah.
you've separated each thread?
I have. So that's what it starts off looking like. I don't know if you can, yeah. And then that's what it looks like when I put them back together. So in terms then of doing your coverage, you're getting a lot more out of your thread by doing it this way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I just think that's a really good question. So thank you for that.
Useful.